What's up, everybody? Josh Smith here. Hey, today I want to talk about financial aid, right? Financial aid. So, a lot of videos that I make, we talk about financial aid, scholarships, things like that. FAFSA is coming, right? Almost like winter is coming. And I got a couple of cameras in front of me, so hopefully you can see me, okay. But FAFSA is coming, and there's been some openings for FAFSA, like some beta testing, a little bit of a I would say early access for a lot of families, but it officially opens December 1st. So at the time of this recording, we are late November, and depending on where you're watching this, hopefully you're watching it before December 1st. So when it comes to FAFSA and some of the recent changes that have taken place about a year ago, but are still very new and have changed a lot of the ways families can receive and qualify for financial aid. One of the main things that I wanted to help you understand is that when it comes to FAFSA, most families do not need help completing the form. The form has been simplified. Now there's going to be glitches. There's going to be some other challenges that are out of your control. You just need to make sure you do your best to submit it and submit it on time. However, when it comes to FAFSA, most families do not need help completing the form because it has been simplified. A lot of it is connected to the IRS data retrieval tool or collecting information that way. You just need to make sure you have all your information in order when it comes to your tax returns, things like that. And for the most part, it's simple. The challenge is not so much in completing the forms, but really where the magic happens is preparing to complete the form. All the planning that typically should go into place before you submit your FAFSA for financial aid. So in this particular video, going live, and I'm talking specifically about some of the preparation, some of the important questions that you need answers to before you submit your students' FAFSA. And this is ideally for those of us that have younger students. This is we have rising college freshmen. If you have already gone through the process, this video may be educational and informative, but it may not be as effective for you, just depending on where you are, due to where you might be in the process. But for those of us that have new or upcoming college students that are preparing for the FAFSA for the first time, this information might be very, very important and valuable to you. So definitely stick around. So I have, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. There's a couple things that I want to go over before I share my screen. And one of those things is when it comes to those questions, I'm going to talk more about the questions before I jump into sharing my screen. So when it comes to some of the questions that you need some answers to, one of the first questions, let me update this right here. One of the first questions that you need to make sure you understand as a parent preparing for FAFSA for the first time, and this might be, again, helpful for those of us that have students that are already in college, but just stick with me. You'll kind of see what I'm saying is, number one is, what is my optimized SAI? What is my optimized SAI? And what do we mean by optimized? And I'll talk more about that when I share my screen. But optimized SAI meaning, and this is a question that I tell every family, every parent that they need to get answers to, regardless if your student is near college, middle school, in college. You want to make sure that your SAI is as optimized as possible. It's as low as possible. So I come across families all the time, and I'll share with you some examples on my screen that make costly mistakes when it comes to the FAFSA and financial aid eligibility. Now, a lot of times with the new changes in a simplified FAFSA process, you're not going to have those same issues because a lot of your income and certain required information is going to be transferred directly from the IRS. But there's still some planning that could be necessary when it comes to your assets, maybe family size, things like that you just want to make sure you understand before you complete the FAFSA. So before you complete the FAFSA, you should already have an idea of what your SAI might be. You should be close. It may not be exact, but you should definitely have an idea of where you stand. And that's going to kind of help you with your planning process as far as the colleges that your student is going to apply to, your savings goals as far as knowing your budget and what you actually need to come up with to cover the cost. Having an idea what your SAI is very, very powerful, and it's very important before your student gets too far in the process. And one thing that you want to do, what I tell a lot of families is, if college were to begin tomorrow, do you know what you are expected to pay? At the very minimum, not including merit scholarships, things like that. If college were to begin tomorrow, based on your unique situation, what are you expected to pay? And that number can be a little different depending on the college that you're considering. There's colleges that go by the federal methodology and colleges that go by the institutional methodology. And it's typically going to be your FAFSA only colleges as well, or compared to your FAFSA plus the CSS profile type colleges, maybe your more prestigious selective universities. But one of the first things you need to do, especially if you're near completing the FAFSA, you're near that time horizon when it comes to, okay, now we got to get our financial aid information in. You want to understand if your SAI is optimized. So this is what I plan on submitting. And is it the best way to submit that information? Am I answering some of these questions the right way? You don't want to overvalue or overinflate your assets and investments to have an inflated SAI. At the same time, you don't want to underinflate or devalue some of your assets. You want to make sure you're completing the information ethically, legally correct, that puts your student in the best possible financial aid situation. So number one is, what is my SAI? Or a better question is, what is my optimized SAI? So this is where we are. If college were to begin tomorrow, this is what I'm expected to pay. And this is what we could possibly do to have that amount lowered or decreased. Okay. And then what does that look like? What do we have to do to decrease that amount? Right? Should we spend this money that we have in our savings account, buy that car, make that home renovation, spend whatever we may have and liquidate, or are we assessing our assets the right way? This is my rough draft SAI. This is my optimized SAI. So that's really important to understand before you complete the FAFSA. Now, question number two, what schools actually provide financial aid? When it comes to building your students list, you do want to have an understanding of what colleges actually provide financial aid. If financials and budgeting is important to you, or it's a key part of your decision-making process. If cost is going to be an issue, you want to understand as you're going through the process, what schools actually provide financial aid. And then, you can also gauge certain colleges based on that question as far as how generous they might be. Some colleges typically provide more aid than others, depending on their endowment funds, their process, and kind of how they recruit and select specific or individual students. But what you want to know, if cost is anything important to you, which I understand it is for most families, what are the schools that provide financial aid? Now, the third question that's really important is, if we are able to demonstrate some type of a need, if we're able to have an optimized SAI, student aid index, if we are able to demonstrate or show that we have a need. Cost of attendance, for example, might be $50,000 and your SAI might be $30,000, right? That means the minimum that a college is going to expect you as a family to pay is $30,000. So that also means that there's a $20,000 need or $20,000 gap. They expect us to pay 30. Cost of attendance in our situation is 50. There's a $20,000 need. So back to the third question, if I'm able to demonstrate need, how much need will this particular college or any college in question provide? How much would they give based on data or based on historical information? A lot of times, this is not going to be available on the net price calculators that you see on the college's website. So what is the likelihood, right, that we get aid and how much? So if we need $20,000, an example that I just used, based on historical data, is the college likely to give me all $20,000 that we need? Are they likely to give me, maybe 5,000, 10,000 of the 20,000. So whatever they don't give you is typically going to be added back to your expected contribution. This is why the SAI initially is your minimum amount that they're going to expect. So if they only meet your need at 50%, right? So I need 20,000, 50% of that would be 10,000. Great. They gave me $10,000. But the other 10,000 that they didn't meet is going to be added back to my student aid index or expected family contribution. Now I'm expected to pay $40,000 out of pocket, and my student is going to receive about $10,000 in financial aid. Very, very, very important to know before you get too far in the process, or at least have that conversation with your student. So let's say, for example, you're having a conversation with your student and you have a budget, you have a threshold, and certain colleges that they're applying to are going to fall, well beyond that threshold. So it's really good to set the right expectation early on as a part of your planning, as a part of your list building. So your student is not surprised. You're not surprised. You're not letting them down. There's no tough conversations when it comes to making that final decision. So that's a really important question to understand, to know. The other question is, what type of need does the college provide? So now we understand that they might meet my need in this example, let's say 50%. So my SAI was 30,000. Cost of attendance is 50,000. The gap that I have there is 20,000. Just review. The college in question is going to meet my need at 50% of what I need. That is $10,000, leaving another $10,000 that I have to add back to my SAI or my expected contribution, saying that I now owe $40,000 and I'm going to get help, or my students are going to get help with the remaining $10,000. But then the next question that we're asking is, what type of need is that college going to help me with? Is it going to be gift aid, scholarships, grants, basically money that we don't have to repay? Or is it going to be self-help, meaning work study, student loans, money that we either have to earn or repay? So if you have to get, I would say if it's going to be gift aid, then that's great, right? You're getting free money and your student is going to be in a better situation. It's actually going to be saving you money, maybe a tuition discount. If it's self-help, that basically means that if it's a loan, you're going to add that back to what you're going to be expected to pay, that $40,000. And let's say 50% of what they're going to help your student with, right? The $10,000, let's say 50% of that is self-help. Another 50% is gift aid. So that basically means that if it's $10,000 that they're going to help with, 50% at $5,000 is going to be self-help. That you can also add back to the $40,000 that you're going to be paying. Now you're looking at $45,000 out of pocket for a $50,000 university, because you still have to pay that money back, even though you don't have to worry about that day one. So it's a delayed, and in fact, it's going to be more than $5,000 when you add in interest and things like that if it's a student loan, for an example, or as an example. So understanding how much need they typically were going to provide you, and then also understanding that not all aid is created equally, it kind of gives you the right understanding and the right perspective going into the process before you complete the FAFSA, before you submit your financial aid information. You need to understand the likelihood that your student is going to get aid, right, based on an optimized SAI, and then what type of aid based on the college that they may be selecting. This is where school selection is very important, because one college that can appear to be more expensive, right, more selective, more costly, that college may also be more generous when it comes to their aid packages. It's typically going to be your more private, your private universities that are selective, that are a little bit more costly. A lot of families kind of stay away and say, hey, you know what, that costs way too much. We're not going to even think about it. We're not going to apply, without doing their due diligence or their research to understand the possibility, the likelihood. So some of these colleges that appear to be more expensive can, I would say, possibly cost less than its public school counterpart. And sometimes they have better graduation rates. If your student is graduating from a more selective university in 4 or 5 years versus 5, 6, or 7 years at a public school, you're going to be saving a lot more money just on the time that they're in college, and then potentially save more money because you're getting more financial aid and or tuition discounts. So as I drink water here, it's really important, as I said a little earlier, that the planning that goes into completing the FAFSA, you focus on. That's where the magic happens. Now, we all know you can pretty much, answer some questions. You can complete the FAFSA on your own. Pretty simple, pretty easy to do. And there is no magic wand. In certain situations, you can't optimize your SAI, but in many situations, you can. So understanding your possibilities, your options is what I'm really emphasizing in this particular video, just trying to get you to understand that do not leave some of those things to chance if cost is something that is important to you, your family, your decision-making process. And the last thing is that I think you should understand before you get too far in the process is what is your true projected cost? So when you add it all up, this is our SAI or optimized SAI. This is the colleges that pretty much provide some aid or some help, or maybe they don't. This is the type of aid that they provide. We find that out after we figure out how much aid percentage-wise they actually provide. So we have, X amount of dollars that they provided, and they provided it this way. Now, this is our true family contribution or our true out-of-pocket expenses. Again, if it's self-help, you basically are needing to add that money back to the bottom line because you still have to pay that. You just have a little bit more time to pay that when it comes to your overall bill. So when it comes to finding money to pay for college, remember this: there's only three sources I would say to tap into. It is going to be past, present, future, right? Dollars. So what we mean by past dollars, these are dollars that you've saved. We saved money in a 529. We saved money in our investment brokerage account. We saved somehow, some way to pay for college. Past money, present money, current income, current cash flow, current revenue, right? This is my situation. We didn't save, but we have the cash flow to cover the bill and or future money. We haven't earned it yet, but we're going to take out some of these loans. And in the future, based on our future income, we're going to be paying that back, and maybe at a little bit of a higher cost when you add in some of the fees and or interest rates. So let me go ahead and share my screen because I think it's really important to see certain things and get a bit of an understanding. What I'm going to do is share this here. So this, what you're seeing on my screen is we do a financial aid analysis. We do this for free. And sometimes we do this where we can put all the different colleges side by side, kind of giving you this information. And this is really, I would say telling. It's it reveals a lot of information that you can use to make important planning decisions. So colleges, guys, it's very expensive. Colleges are businesses. It's really important to understand what you're doing, what you're getting into before you get too far into the process. So for example, here, this particular college is the University of Fullerton, or Cal State Fullerton, excuse me, here in Southern California. And the estimated cost of attendance is about $27,000, right? The 4 to 6 year graduation rate is 23% in 4 years, 69% in 6 years. Pretty crazy, right? To think that 2 out of 10 students do not graduate in 4 years at Cal State Fullerton. But graduation rates are very important. I see I have some information here redacted because for privacy's sake, for some of the families that this information belongs to. But what's really interesting to understand is the optimized EFC or SAI. We used to call it EFC, so you hear me saying that a lot. Expected family contribution. Essentially, it's still your expected contribution, but now it's called your student aid index or SAI. But this particular analysis shows that the estimated SAI, based on the information that the parent provided, was about $36,000. $36,000 SAI. And this is a raw or rough draft SAI, and it actually has a potential to come down to closer to zero. Now, I wouldn't say to come down to zero. Maybe it's somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to maybe 10,000. But it's good to know that their expected contribution can be lower, making the student more eligible for financial aid, even at a local public university that doesn't have a lot of endowment dollars to provide. But that's really cool to know. Now, this particular family is a I want to say high income family. I would say upper middle class, anywhere between right around $200,000 to $300,000 a year in income, and parent is is self-employed. So, but there's a lot of options and opportunities that this particular family has when it comes to optimizing their student aid index, their SAI. And then see down here where it says financial aid eligibility, before 0, afterwards 276. Now, this is also based on the specific college that the student is applying to. This number could be higher or lower depending on how much money the college typically provides based on historical data. But this is financial aid eligibility. Now, expected gift aid before and after, sorry about that, before and after is going to be about $0 to $204. Now, the important thing to really focus on in this section over here is the first step, the SAI. If we can get that SAI to be lower, it opens the student up to other college options that are more generous, that provide more money and help the family save on their overall out-of-pocket costs. But as you see down here, self-help, estimated unmet need, and estimated total family contribution. Now, all these are extremely important to understand based on some of the questions that I was mentioning that you get answers to before you get too far in the process. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like in this particular pie. This right here, as you can see, as I zoom in a little bit, that at this particular college, the average need met is only 1%. So no matter what this family did when it comes to aid eligibility, right, SAI, so if their SAI is 36,000 and they got that all the way down to 0, no matter what they do, historically, this particular college is still not going to help them out and give them more financial aid. Really important to understand. So it's not always just about optimizing your aid eligibility or your student aid index. It's a combination of things. So if you see here, the SAI is from 36,000 down to 0, but the family is still expected to pay, you see on the bottom right here, $27,000 no matter what. They saved $36,000 or reduced their SAI by $36,000 in this particular example, and it only saved them about $300 in overall cost. SAI is really important. I tell all my families that I work with, you want to fire on all cylinders. So yes, you do want to optimize your SAI where possible, when applicable, but it doesn't always solve the problem. It can sometimes, and it does in many situations, but it also goes back to what schools they're considering, what schools your student is applying to. So as you see, Cal State Fullerton, being a public college, only provides 1% of need, okay? And then of that, about 74% of that 1% is gift aid. They'll give you 1% of what you need, and they'll give most of that in form of gift aid, which is still nothing, right? It doesn't scratch the surface. And then most of the other help is coming at about a form of 26% in a form of gift aid. So this, in my humble opinion, if budget or finances are something that is important to you or this particular family, I would recommend that they add additional colleges to the students list that are more generous. And that definitely plays a role when it comes to filing an appeal and things like that. Unless the student is going to be in the top 1% of the incoming freshmen, they are not going to get much money from this particular college. And this is an example, but there's a lot of colleges out there that are pretty similar as far as their ability to meet a family's need. Now, here's a different family that I want to talk about as I scroll down. And now we have a different college. This is Central Missouri. Now, look at their situation. So the family has a before student aid index at about 9,700 and after of about 2,000, which is still pretty good. It's not as big of a jump, from 36,000 to 0, but it's still a $7,000 difference in what they are expected to pay, or the minimum that they're expected to pay. So when you see in this situation, you see aid eligibility go from about 12,000, as you see right here, to 16,000. Now, even if this is all right, I went from pretty much a $12,000 8 eligibility to a 16,000 8 eligibility. And if I was able to get 8, fill in that gap, completely, that saves me about $4,000 a year, or, maybe $20,000 over 5 years, $24,000 over 6 years, and what I'm going to be paying for college, which definitely helps. $4,000 a year is a big deal. Now you look down here, total family contribution, it went from 18,000 to about 13,000. That's a $5,000 saving, right? $5,000 saving based on the new number and optimizing the student aid index. Now, as I erase this over here, you get a better outlook. This particular college is going to meet a family's need at about 59%, which is a big deal compared to the 1% that we talked about in the example prior to. 59%. So if you have a need at this particular college, this university, you're likely to get a portion of that need met, which is what we ultimately want. And you want to have more schools on your students' list that have a strong chance of meeting their need. And then you look at it here a little closer, you say, okay, well, the typical amount that they'll meet is about 59% based on my situation, right? Not everyone's situation, but based on mine. Or I would say more importantly, the 59% is not more importantly, but more accurately, 59% is the historical average, but it is also based on the SAI that you have, which is based on your situation. So when it comes to the gift aid amount, you're looking here at about 49%. They're pretty much helping you out, gift aid compared to self-help, 50-50. So they'll meet your need at about 60%. And of that 60%, 50% of it is going to be gift aid. Another 50% of it is going to be self-help, which is not a bad situation, especially if it's within your budget, within your threshold. But again, what I'm emphasizing here is the planning, right? That's what's really important. And then last example that I'll share with you is Duke University. So some of us are familiar with Duke, right? It's a little college in North Carolina. They have a decent basketball program. I don't know if you know anything about sports or basketball, but Duke University, it's a great college, right? Great college to attend. And as you see here, the estimated cost is about $87,000. $87,000. That alone is going to deter a lot of families from even considering Duke, right? $87,000, $90,000? No, that's ridiculous. But just stay with me for a little bit. Humor my point of view and what I have to come. But when you look at the $87,000 or $90,000, you see the graduation rate at 4 and 6 years to be 88 and 96%. 88 and 90, that means 8 out of 10 students are going to graduate in 4 years. And almost 100% of those students are going to be done in 6 years. That's where we want to be. That's where we want our kids. We want them to not only get into a great college, we want them to finish. We want them to get on to their career, make money, enjoy life, have options, right? That's why we're sending them to college. That's how we get the highest return on our investment. So you have the public school that I showed you a little earlier at Cal State Fullerton, 2 out of 10 graduate in 4 years compared to Duke. Yes, Duke is going to cost more, but they're going to have more students finishing and graduating and on to their career path than its public school counterpart. Now, the question is, and you see here, the institutional methodology. So let me scroll up a little bit right here. The way that this particular college dictates aid eligibility is going to be a federal method. I talked about that a little earlier, but Duke is using institutional method, right? And this is going to be more of a CSS profile university compared to Cal State Fullerton or Central Missouri using a federal method, just the FAFSA. That's not as important today as far as this particular conversation. I have other videos where I've talked about CSS profile and FAFSA. But what's important to know are some of the details, some of the numbers. So at Duke University, the sticker price is a lot more expensive, obviously. Graduation rates are also a lot better. And you see here, for this family who has a $65,000 SAI initially, once optimized, it's about a $50,000, so a $15,000 difference, which is not too shabby, right? Not too bad. But this is probably a high income family, right? If you get a $50,000 SAI or even a $65,000, that means you either have some savings or some pretty good income, and that's where your EFC or your SAI might be. And this is not the same for every family, but in this particular example, they still have a $15,000 difference between their rough draft or their raw SAI and their optimized SAI. Now, as we look here, jumping into the pie graph, now look at this here. The average need met at Duke University is 100%. 100%. That is huge. And of that 100%, you're talking about 91% free money. 91% free money. So if you have a $30,000 SAI, a $25,000, $10,000, zero SAI, even a $40,000 SAI, Duke University can be less expensive than its public school counterpart. Now, the question is, how do we get our kids accepted to Duke? That's where the focus should be, right? Doing all the right things their sophomore year, their freshman year, sophomore year, their junior year, right? To get them to be in a position where they can get accepted to some of these more selective universities that have the ability to provide a lot more money. But 100% of need met, and 90% of that 100% is gift aid or free money. We're focusing sometimes as parents on the wrong things. This is what's important. Yes, you can complete the FAFSA on your own, but the preparation that goes into FAFSA is really where you need to focus. The list that your student has is really where you need to focus. So in closing, in conclusion, a couple of things that I want to just bring home and make sure you understand is, number one, optimizing your SAI is extremely important. Financial aid planning is very similar to tax planning. You want to do all the planning necessary before you file your taxes, so you are paying the right amount, but not more than what you should be paying. So consider FAFSA, consider CSS profile, as well as financial aid the same way. You want to do the planning before you submit the FAFSA. Number two, school selection is huge. School selection is a huge deal, and one of the main reasons families overpay for college. One of the most costly mistakes a family can make is selecting the wrong college or wrong colleges to apply to. So understanding those two things before you get too far in the process can save you thousands, if not thousands, and more thousands of dollars every year on how much you're going to be paying for college. And lastly, the third thing that you definitely want to understand and know is not only should your student have a more balanced list, you need to be doing the right things, or find out what are the right things you need to do to give them the slight edge, the greater chances of being accepted to some of these colleges that have the ability to save you money. So with that being said, thank you for watching this video. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow. Today is the 20th. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow on some of the things answering some of the questions that I brought up, and kind of giving a little bit more substance on the admissions process, financial aid, and scholarships. So if you're interested in that, there'll be a description somewhere not in the comments. There'll be a link in the description, excuse me. But if you got questions, we got answers. If you want any of this free information, these analysis that we do, we also, like I said, we do these side by side, so you can see every single college lined up side by side. Let me know about that. But this analysis can be very valuable. It can aid in planning and kind of building your students' list and budgeting. So this is completely free. If you have any questions or you're interested in this information, do not hesitate to reach out and schedule a time to speak with me or someone on my team. But I hope this information was helpful. And I always say, what you don't know can definitely cost you. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.